Good evening. Welcome. Thank you so much for attending this evening. I would like to thank Pastor Becky, Debbie, and the staff of Second First for their unbelievable welcoming in helping us put this together. I'd also like to introduce some celebrities. First, our President and Vice President, Claire McIntyre, and Sue the Dean. I'd also like to express my deep appreciation to my Gun Violence Prevention Committee members, Lynn Townsend, Faye Marcus, Joy Jordan, Karen Litwin, and Carol Davies. The best committee ever, and I thank you so much for all your hard work. Thank you to our greeters, Patty Stottleman and Karen Weedman. Our registrars, Janie Wilson-Cook, Sue the Dean, and Karen Litwin. And our card collectors, Kathy McIntyre and Linda Miller. And any candidates or office holders who are here, please stand. They are here to hear your views.
So first, I would just say thank you to our amazing hosts as well as to the League of Appointed Voters for having this important forum. Obviously, gun violence is absolutely plaguing our city. We are losing far too many of our young people if it's in Uvalde, Texas, in a classroom, or if it's on the streets of Rockford. I know there's been a lot of discussion about a lot of different gun reforms, and just to be clear, I certainly support the ban on assault weapons. I support limiting magazine capacity. I support mandated and thorough background checks. But I think one thing that's been missing, at least on national television, is that's just one piece of the discussion that needs to take place. I think when you look at what's taking place in the city of Rockford, our police right now are arresting 13, 14, and 15-year-olds. They're arresting these young people for such things as carrying guns, stealing cars, armed robberies. I think we truly have been plagued by this cycle of violence in our community for decades, and we need to get to the root cause. And when we look at the data, it shows us very clearly that our young people have been impacted by trauma. Most often, that trauma is because of physical or sexual violence in their own household, but that trauma, exactly what Dr. Martel said, is exacerbated by some of those social determinants of health. If it's health factors, if that's an environment, if it's poverty, it's exacerbated. Now that we know what is taking place in our community, someone once told me, when you know something, you have to do it better. You know something, you have to do it a lot better. So what we have done is City Council allocated $1.75 million and also expanded our office that Jennifer Petropolia runs, and she'll go through a number of the work that she's doing. We've also put a lot more resources towards technology to aid our police department, and I know Chief will do that. But I want to also highlight the City of Rockford is just one piece of this entire system. We really need, since it's a systematic problem, we need a systematic solution. And that means that everyone needs to play their role. And that means that the courts need to play their role, the schools need to play their role in a lot better than what they're doing today. Our clergy need to be a lot more active than what they are today. And our parents need to be more engaged than what they are today. I also think there's a lot of programs that make a lot of us feel really good. We need to start examining the data and find out, do they have meaningful and measurable outcomes? If they don't, get rid of them. If they do, speed them.
So I'm Jen Michipali. I'm also very happy to be here all of you today. And I'm just going to run through a couple of points and then look forward to your questions. Just over 4 years ago, our office was tasked with developing a public safety framework that required and relied on other systems players to examine their outcomes and improve their response to survivors of domestic and sexual violence in our community. And we have taken a very systemic root cause approach to these issues. I want to be very clear about the fact that when our office expanded just over a year ago, we were led to this expansion by the outcry of survivors of domestic and sexual violence who left an imprint in City of Rockford police reports for us to follow. And what we discovered when we looked at those reports is that anywhere between 65 to 75% of our young violent offenders who are walking around our community with guns, who are walking around our community conducting carjackings, and who are walking around our community engaging in other chaotic behavior, are cross-referenced and listed in City of Rockford police reports as victims of or witnesses to domestic or sexual violence. We looked at those police reports over a period between 2016 and 2020. We've just completed an analysis of 2021's year, and we've discovered that we remain on track. 68% of our young violent offenders in 2021 fit that mark as well. And so we've taken a multi-pronged approach that has really led the deployment of at least 16 strategies around youth violence prevention. And a 17th I'll add really is something I hope all of you have heard of, and that's the Rockford Family Peace Center. But what we've done is deployed strategies along the continuum of pre-prevention, prevention, pre-intervention, intervention, diversion in prosecution cases, and then finally prosecution when there's really nothing left for us to do. I'm happy to go into the details of any of those programs with any of you anytime, but for the interest of time and for the sake of this forum, I will just say that the basic tenets that we operate under in deploying and developing these strategies are that we are data and outcome driven. And what I mean by that is that we go directly to the community on a regular and ongoing basis. We hold listening sessions where our community is. We hold interviews where our community is. And we have cultivated and hired, and we pay them for their expertise and time, a grassroots team in our office of people with lived experience who have survived being a child and experiencing trauma, and in fact have navigated our criminal justice system. And in that sense, we are also community-centered. Our outcomes are driven by our community. And we are working with Regional and Planning Council to develop a data infrastructure to ensure that our outcomes are effective and that we are actually doing what we said we were going to do. And then finally, we are collaborative. As the mayor said, these issues will take our entire community to address. And so we do not do anything without a multidisciplinary team approach. And so I'll turn it over to the chairman now.
Thank you. As I stated earlier, my name is Joe Shirley. I'm the Winnebago County Board Chairman. Former Rockford Alderman for 8 years, serving with the mayor and Jen. Fantastic work. As Jennifer just said, collaboration, that's the key point. You see the panelists here in front of you. We are all committed to collaboration. We are all here committed to working together. We are determined to improve our policies and our strategies in Winnebago County. In the county of Winnebago, we are the 7th largest county in the state of Illinois, out of 102 counties. We are mandated by the state of Illinois to financially support the county's criminal justice system, which includes the sheriff's department, the jail, the courts, the state's attorney and public defender's office, and the probation department. That's an enormous criminal justice system, and how we align those systems is what I'll talk about in a little bit. Preventing and reducing crime is our top priority in the administration of Winnebago County and the county board. Strategies are ongoing and continue to be developed throughout the criminal justice system. Collaboration is key among stakeholders. It is one of our main priorities for improvement. That's important for improvement in reducing violent crime. We have Many initiatives going forward in collaboration with the City of Rockford. The Focus Returns Calling Program. That's a program where parolees coming back and reintroduced into our community. We stand up and we talk to these parolees and we offer them services and support through a navigator and make sure that ultimately they do not reoffend. I have convened meetings with all the mayors of Winnebago County and all the police chiefs in Winnebago County to implement ways that we can partner to decrease violent crime. Those meetings have produced results. Through collaboration, they have been working together to arrest violent criminals with active warrants. That's an important point. They are now collaborating stronger than they ever have before. They're also sharing intelligence and data to identify violent criminals in our community and making arrests. However, our law enforcement cannot do this alone. The ongoing partnerships that we see here in all local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies need to combat the crime that they need our help. We all in Winnebago County need to stand up and collaborate with all law enforcement agencies to be party to the solution. The entire Winnebago County has to be party to the solution. We've created the Office of Criminal Justice Initiatives in Winnebago County, and I'll let Marlene Adopka, my director, speak more about it. It's a very important office to align services and to increase funding for all the criminal justice system. But here's the last takeaway. We are Winnebago County, and we can do this together. It takes all hands on deck to really solve this problem with the increasing violent crime in our community, and I pray that we all continue to work together.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for this important community conversation. I agree with everything that's been said so far. We have been collaborating. Like the Chairman stated, my office was created in April of 2021. In the first 12 months, I brought in $4 million new dollars to address the crime problem in Rockford. That does not include any American Rescue funding. You can find a list of new strategies out in the hall where we have a complete list, but as it would be the nature of the county criminal justice system, our crime reduction and prevention typically comes in after an arrest has occurred, and the focus is on decreasing the risk of reoffending. This approach is always done with research and always done with evidence-based practice and always done with the trauma-informed approach. We do work with adult offenders. It's always a good idea. We work with adult and youth offenders. And it's always a good idea to continue working with both. One, because adults have children, and we want adult offenders to be good parents. If they don't have their own children, they have influence over other children in the community. If you don't think so, that's who they're looking for too. We have, when we rehabilitate an adult, we increase the child's protective factors, so that's really important. We also know that detainment of youth is just a Band-Aid. It does little to address the underlying issues, and they're rarely in a facility for very long. So our response to juvenile crime is to increase programming, whether in detention or in programming or in the community. Our adult and juvenile probation officers are not the probation officers you know yesterday. They're all fully trained in motivational interviewing and core correctional practices. They utilize validated risk assessments, and they're cross-trained in cognitive behavioral therapy. The juvenile probation officers are also trained in aggression replacement therapy. Further, court service has established the Juvenile Resource Intervention Center. The first program will be dialectic behavioral therapy. This treats antisocial personality disorder, which is very common among this population. The Juvenile Detention Center is implementing behavioral health techniques that will include group therapy, one-on-one counseling, and discharge planning. Additionally, the Resource Intervention Center, which has been closed at 5, we have listened to the community. They wanted expanded hours. They've expanded the hours to 8 p.m. at night, and we've also increased our navigators in the community with 4 navigators working with violent offenders on the night and weekends. So again, none of this could be done without collaboration, and none of it could be done without the community. And I'm in agreement with the League of Women Voters and everybody here that Winnebago County is strong, and I believe that we can get this done together, but we can only get it done together. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jay Hamley, again, State's Attorney. I appreciate y'all being here. I'm going to talk about 4 strategies or initiatives that the State's Attorney's Office is working on, but I think it's probably important, and I appreciate the 2 minutes to talk about, I think, what we're doing well, or working tirelessly to do. I can tell you that one of the things that will be the focus of our office is the juvenile justice system. I think most of the initiatives that I'm going to talk about all of them deal with adults. I think where our office needs to get better, and we're really good at dealing with juveniles in the system, but really good isn't good enough right now. We need to try ourselves. So that will be our office's focus over the next 6 to 9 months. But one other thing before I begin with the initiatives is our office is primarily reactive. And I think as a modern prosecutor, I'm trying to become more proactive and get further upstream, if you will. But the reality is, in the budget that I have, we employ prosecutors and administrative staff. So our job primarily is to prosecute, and through that, deter violence of any kind, particularly gun violence. We've started a gun court on May 16th, and this is in collaboration with the Public Defender's Office and the 17th Judicial Circuit. All those who are charged with gun possession charges will go to a designated courtroom. Judge McGraw is the judge. Will be designated and dedicated state's attorneys and public defenders in that court. And the goals there are to hold gun offenders accountable, reduce recidivism, incentivize law-abiding behavior through thoughtful sentencing alternatives. The bottom line is by having all gun crimes in one courtroom, the penalties and the way we deal with them should be swift, certain, and fair. The second initiative is focused deterrence, which has been mentioned. We have a designated prosecutor who works around high-risk individuals who are typically coming back from the Department of Corrections. And there's really 2 components to it. One is the opportunity or incentive that they have, and that's really kind of our latest. The second part of it is the deterrent effect. And we do tell them, we look them in the eye and say, we will be treated differently by our office. And we've already had some success in that. Secondly, or thirdly, intelligence-led prosecution. So in designating 2 major case prosecutors, we're really focusing on a relatively small population that's causing most of the serious crimes in our community, particularly gun violence. And what that has really done is allow us to increase the number of cases accepted by our federal partners. So one of our attorneys from our office is actually designated as a special assistant U.S. attorney. And the number of referrals and acceptance rates by those federal prosecutors has shot up. And that's had a real effect on the streets, if you will, to be frank. Federal prosecution really means something, and our office has done a really good job partnering with them. Lastly, recently I was put on a statewide commission to increase the use of basically firearms border protections. We are a red flag state, and while it is an Illinois law, it's not being used by enough counties. We're just not doing a good job utilizing that tool. So that was a commission that I recently put on, and so one of our goals is to educate counties and law enforcement agencies on that and start using that more frequently. Again, I appreciate the time tonight. I look forward to more questions.
Good evening, everyone. I'm State Representative Maurice West, and I'm really excited to be here with you, but at the same time, I'm kind of sad to be here because 4 years ago, we did the same thing at East High School, when I was rep-elect at the time, and we talked about implementing red flag laws, we talked about gun violence in our schools, we talked about common sense gun reform, and yet here we are in 2022 talking about the same thing. Amen. But what I want to talk to you real briefly about is what we've done in the state of Illinois since 2018, since we met again last time in the East. One thing that we worked on when it comes to red flag laws, and I'm really excited to hear that our state's attorneys on that commission. But when it passed in 2018, it was all bark, no bite. And one thing I learned quickly is that it's one thing to pass a law, but it's another thing to get that law implemented throughout the state. And so we beefed up the red flag laws and we put funding behind our red flag laws to help law enforcement to identify, help them to figure out who those individuals are, and how to really and educate not just our law enforcement, but our public through the Illinois Department of Public Health to make sure our community understands red flag laws. Again, our state's attorney is on that, so Winnebago County is represented well on there. We also dealt with FOIA issues. We had legislation called Fix the FOIA in the state of Illinois, and that was passed. And what it did was it essentially modernized the FOIA system. FOIA card law is 55 years old. It was time for an update to keep up with where we are today. And what it does, it gives us more money to our police, our state police, for dealing with FOIA and concealed carry applications. If you try to get a FOIA card, basically, it took months, almost over a year, just to get that FOIA card. Now we're making that process quicker. We also, in the state of Illinois, became the first state in the Midwest to ban ghost guns. We did that last month. The governor signed that last month, should I say. And ghost guns are parts that are assembled, that are purchased online, and you don't have to get a background check because you found a loophole in the system. You found that loophole, you closed it. And last but not least, and there's many other things that I'm looking forward to talking to you about, Reimagine Public Safety dollars are coming to Rockford. $50 million is coming to Rockford. Money that's going straight to the community organizations that's dealing directly with young people that are partaking in deviant behavior with adults, and figuring out how we can help them find those bootstraps and lift themselves up and stem the tide of violence and gun violence as a whole. I have so much to say, but I have a stop sign in front of me, so I'm going to loop around later.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be watching for my stop sign as well. So, in regards to what Rockford Police Department is doing to address I'm going to say it's a community epidemic. It was stated earlier. What you're seeing that's taking place in regards to gun violence in the city of Rockford is just not in Rockford. It's all over the country. So we have heard it over and over again in regards to a collaborative approach. I am pleased with the work we have been doing with the mayor's office, with Jennifer's office as well, in regards to looking at that prevention and intervention model. I will tell you right now, I couldn't be any more proud of the work that the men and women do on the Rockford Police Department. If you did not hear, last year we recovered 433 guns off of the street in the city of Rockford. And that's, thank you, and I will tell you that our approach has been from an intelligence-led policing model. So that we pretty much know those individuals that are out here causing our crime numbers to rise, if you will. And those are the individuals that we're coming after. Working with the state's attorney's office, and we have regular communications, regular meetings in regards to those individuals. And once they're arrested, we're tracking them. Also, we're working with the Winnebago County Sheriff's Office, where we both have, I would call them our high-risk teams that are out in the evening time, where we do a couple details together each month. And those individuals that we are looking for that may have warrants and they manage to try and evade apprehension, we're going after them. So if that means calling in helicopters to assist us in our process, we will do that as well. I will tell you one of the things that I spoke about early on after coming into office is that from the intervention model and prevention piece, we should not be at the point where a parent reaches out for help and they're being told that your child has not been in enough trouble in order for us to help them. That should not be a standard where a child has to be in trouble to get assistance. And I will tell you, I have a lot of parents out there that really care about what their kids are doing, but it's unfortunate that they reach an age mark where mom's at home raising 3 other kids and this 15 or 16-year-old is running rampant, and mom has to shift the focus on the rest of the kids that are in the home that she feels like she can still have an impact on. So working with the individuals in our community with lived experiences that have stepped up and volunteered to be mentors for these kids that we're coming across is also something that we're looking forward to taking advantage of. And I'm going to sit down before I get the stop sign. Thank you.
thank you all. You did really good sticking to your 3 minutes. We are going to ask questions and answers. Somebody will be handing out cards. While they are doing that, I thought this might be a good time to let you know what the League of Women Voters' position is on guns. To curb the proliferation of private ownership of handguns and their irresponsible use, the League supports a ban on the further manufacture, sale, transportation, and importation of handguns and their parts. Additionally, the League advocates restricting access to automatic and semi-automatic assault type weapons by private individuals. These weapons present a clear and unequivocal danger to public safety. Therefore, the League believes that it is essential to restrict or prohibit the possession, sale, manufacture, importation, and transportation of semi-automatic assault-type weapons for private ownership. Additionally, the sale of ammunition for these weapons should be restricted and prohibited. The League favors restrictive legislation at both the state and federal levels. And before we take your questions, I'm going to use my prerogative here. Maybe Representative Maurice West will explain what the red flag laws are, what they entail, how they work.
Thank you for that question. So, this is Western translation. But red flag laws, essentially, if you are concerned of the mental welfare of an individual who happens to be a gun owner, you can report that, and the guns from that particular individual will be taken from them until an assessment is provided on their well-being and on their mental health. And if all checks out, they'll receive their guns back. And so, again, what I mentioned earlier about funding going towards red flag laws, not many people know that was a law that we passed almost 3 years ago. And so we got to make sure that, that our communities, especially here in our county, are educated. That it's not about taking the guns and keeping them. It's just about making sure that you are in a good place mentally, especially if there's people around you who are concerned. And then if all checks out again, we'll give you the guns back. If you look at some of the mass shootings that we saw, there were warning signs before that assailant walked into the school, walked into the church, or things of that nature. And so red flag laws are trying to be proactive rather than reactive, trying to help prevent the situation before it occurs. And because when we are reactive, that's a fatality, that's the loss of life. So that's what red flags are. That answers your question.
One thing I think that we need to know with the red flag laws is that the people that are concerned and asking somebody to look at their loved ones, those people that are talked to, they're brought to court, they have due process. It's not just, he said you're bad, we're going to take your gun away. So I think it's important to remember that they do have due process. Okay, what can we do better to address youth crime, from accountability to services once youth are arrested?
Okay, so I will say I think there's a lot of wonderful partnerships and a lot of things that are going well. I really do. I think there are more pockets of hope that we don't talk about. I think the partnerships and collaboration people are saying, it's not just a talk, it's actually taking place. And that is exciting. I would say juvenile crime, 2 areas that are deep concerns for me. One is every county in Illinois, I believe, has a point system for juveniles. In that point system, if you get up to, let's say, 12 points, then you can be lodged overnight. I think our point system, just truthfully, is ludicrous. I think you can be a felon and a known gang member and commit mob action, and that's not enough to lodge you just for that infant. That, I think, is trouble. I think then once the juvenile is caught, I think they go through something called a juvenile assessment center. And I think that juvenile assessment center, and it's in the works, can be a really meaningful place to have people with lived experiences, navigators there, to connect these young people who have had, and so they've had these experiences. It's not me who's telling some young person, I've been in your shoes, this is a path that you can go down, and walking that person down and being with that person throughout their struggle to get them on the right path. I think those are two really meaningful ways that would help pretty immediately with the juvenile life. I would say when it comes to Winnebago County, no offense to some of the board members, and I love Joe Shirelli, wish he was still on city council. I think often there's been this frustration between the city and the county. I don't believe the city of Rockford gets our fair share of, let's say, the 1% public safety tax. I mean, we actually get 0% of that 1% public safety tax, which generates 28 to 32 million. There's some ancillary programs that our citizens can benefit from. And obviously, if you're funding the jail, you can say that you're funding a portion of it towards Rockford residents who live there, but I think there needs to be more youth prevention, intervention programs that are run through that 1%.
So, 2020, I was elected county board chairman. So I've been there about a year and a half. First question I received as chairman from a lot of different stakeholders is about the 1% sales tax and how that tax is not being transparent to the public. When the mayor asked me for the results, what's been spent, I immediately gave him that report. So there's been a lot of confusion about the transparency of that document. And do we have a lot of work to do? Of course we do. We need more intervention and prevention programs in Winnebago County. But again, coming from the city of Rockford for 8 years as an alderman and a year and a half as county chairman, we are going to do better in the county. We have great collaboration occurring. We have great teams that are working with all our stakeholders concerning that 1% sales tax. Winnebago County's budget is $185 million for the entire county. And I have already explained that we are 7 of the 9 branches of the criminal justice system. We are mandated by state statutes to fund all of those departments. We need to do better with our 1% sales tax, but it's going to take a little bit of time to turn that around, to refocus on the prevention and intervention programs and the deterrence programs. I'm committed to it. The county board is committed to it. What you see up here right now in this panel is a collaboration of people who are committed and determined to do that. So that is our pledge. We will be doing that. But all I can ask from people is give us a little time. The creation of that 1% sales tax goes back more than 20 years, I believe. I'm correct. 2003. Thank you. So it's going to take a little bit of time because there's obligations to those dollars. Those dollars have been encumbered for years. A lot of those bonds are dropping off. A lot of those commitments will be dropping off. And it is, again, a pledge of the Winnebago County Administration and the Winnebago County Board to focus our attention, as stated earlier, by everyone, and that collaboration of prevention and intervention. As far as the Juvenile Assessment Center, I want everybody to know here, we're maybe 1 of 2 in the entire state that has that Juvenile Assessment Center. Right? That's unique for Illinois. That's a great program. Can we do better? Absolutely. As the mayor stated about the assessment tool, of course. Times change. Things need to be looked at differently. And that's what we're doing in collaboration with the city of Rockford, the probation department, the state's attorney's office. We are committed to doing that and reflecting the times we are today with these 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds that are being arrested and changing that tool to reflect the crimes that are committed today compared to when they were before. So that is another commitment that we're making. Did I miss any part of the other question, Joe?
Got it? Thank you.
I'm sorry, but the next question is actually from my committee. And it is, why is the school district, Rockford Public School 205, not part of this conversation? They expel too many students to our community streets. Yes, you're absolutely right. When we were putting this panel together, we were constrained by time. We didn't want to lose people if this went on for too long. But this is intended to be a continuation. The community must get involved. And as that happens, we will have more of these forums. And believe me, we will get Rockford Public Schools here. I have a personal interest in seeing that happens. Okay, oops. Next one is for Mr. Mayor. How, as a community, do we encourage all of the churches to do more to help our youth, such as mentoring, after-school programs, create a safe environment for them, for working moms, and a place for children so they are able to work?
Well, I haven't done it yet, so take my thoughts with a grain of salt. So I host a monthly meeting with faith leaders. Any faith leader, we have 250, 350 faith leaders on an email. We include them in on this discussion. And really the goal is to get our faith leaders to run and own this discussion. I'm really fortunate here in this congregation. Pastor Becky actually has actively participated. I say that because too few actually even participate. I often think that some people believe to get involved, it's this monstrous amount of time. They have to adjust their entire lifestyle to get involved. And really, there's so many simple ways that every member of our community and our faith community can really do it from a very unique perspective because they are often trusted confidants, and many people go to them before they go to their alderman or the county board member, and certainly before their mayor with simple issues. But I think when you look at all of these opportunities, every one of our programs, one of the biggest things that our young people are saying, they need someone to mentor them. And that's a cup of coffee, that's bringing them for a pot, that's just texting them, saying, hey, how you doing today? How was school? Summer's on. What programs are you going to do? Just a simple communication. It's not sitting down for hour-long conversations. They don't want to have that with you. Newsflash. They just want someone that they know is checking in on them, someone that loves them. I mean, they really want three big things. They want to feel like they belong. They want some hope that tomorrow's going to be better than what their current circumstances is. And they want what all of us want. They want some form of economic opportunity in the form of, they want to make some money and spend some money. And that's what they want to do. And I think all of us can play a small role. You can look at Rockford Promise, where these young people have free college tuition. All of them need mentors. All of them need mentors. That's a simple task to a first-time college-going student. You can participate and reach out to Jennifer's team in her office, and she may want to touch on it, about all the mentoring opportunities that we have. But I will tell you, again, we did a program, sorry to dialogue so much, but we did a program that we went out to bus stops at 5 different schools, 5 schools that were having a very difficult time with violence after school. The kids were leaving the school, getting into their buses or getting picked up. We did a call for pastors. If we would have just relied on pastors, I don't think we could have covered one school. We called different organizations. You had organizations like Youth Services Network, the Family Peace Center, YMCA, the Park District, who adopted these schools. And pastors. I mean, there absolutely were some faith leaders there. But it doesn't take just faith leaders. I think we also need to push on our own faith leaders to say, are you engaged? Are you active? What other things can we do? And often it's just walking around your own neighborhood. We also did a program, but we did a program and we asked faith leaders, can you take your congregation for a walk 0.25 miles around your building? And we showed them a map. If everyone did 0.25 miles to half a mile around their building, every single street in Rockford was covered. I had about 7 pastors take me up on it. Ask them just to, let's get outside, it's beautiful out, it's summertime, just do it during the summer. Don't evangelize, just say hi to people. You'll probably increase your congregation too.
So I'm just going to add to what the mayor referenced in regards to reaching out to the pastors, especially when we started with having those volunteers come out to the bus stop for the kids. He did mention we did have some pastors that showed up and some congregation members that came out and participated as well. And I think the nail was hit on the head in regards to the kids just need somebody to be there. You would not believe how many don't get breakfast going out the door, don't hear a kind word all day. And then accompanied by the fact that our kids, our community, they watch to see what's going on. They watch to see how programs hit the deck, get volunteers, and we have organizations that are there. Now, and then a week later, they're gone. It's real old rock. It's really old. We have to stop stepping out and say we're going to do something based on funding, and then when the funding goes away, we go away. It's time for that. So, and I'm just going to reference one of my assistant deputy chiefs. So the program went into place 2 weeks before the Christmas break, and then even after, once Christmas break ended, the New Year rolled around, they all came back to the schools. And one of my assistant deputy chiefs had been saying hello to this kid every day. She would just look at him and turn her head, look at her head. And then as the week went on, she started running. So once Christmas break ended and they come back, she was like, oh, you guys came back. I figured you would be gone by now. So, and just to add, and I can speak from the Black perspective when it comes to churches. My husband is a pastor, so rest assured I know what I'm talking about. We ought to be tired of burying our kids. Yes. And I need the pastors in the churches, and I don't care what church you're in, to step up and have those critical conversations with your congregation. I said it at Auburn High School. We know who the kids are with guns. They're your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews. And it's time out for being quiet about it. And I'm pleased to say that I've had some parents step up and come to us and reach out in regards to their kids and them carrying guns. And the intervention pieces are taking place. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Amen.
I thought I'd stick on this side for a little bit. The next one, I think actually Jay Hammond would be good with this one. What is done to increase penalties for using guns in crimes? Real guns or make-believe guns? What differences in penalties make?
Well, so that we can really get into the weeds, but typically the enhancement for firearms are a couple things. One, did you use the firearm in commission of offense? Right? That's treated differently than just possessing a firearm. Right? I think that you all know that probably instinctively, and the law treats that very differently. Secondly, the law treats you differently based on your background. The most common example of that is if you're a felon in Illinois, you cannot possess a firearm, and there are enhanced penalties based on that. So one of an example that sometimes is used is assault. There are lots of different assaults. Thank you. But an assault with a firearm is absolutely treated far different than any other type of assault. And there are enhanced penalties. In the federal system, there are arguably even more enhancements, and they have more mandatory minimums than we do. One example that we're facing right now is what are called switches or auto sears. So these are 3D printed devices that you can put on a 9mm handgun that will make it a literal, fully automatic machine gun. Well, in the state of Illinois, there is no enhancement for a switch or an auto sear. Whereas if you go across the street to our federal courthouse, I believe it's either 5 or 10 year mandatory minimum. So what we're seeing is kids, youth, but others as well, paying $100 for these switches or auto sears and then putting on the meter. So that's something that the legislature may have to look at. But now I'm kind of going far beyond the question. But the reality is, what you do with the gun and who you are really what the law looks at when it comes to enhancements.
I have a question here that probably is going to have to be answered by multiple people. When should we begin to see results from all of these concerted, I guess, what we're doing? Will there ever be foot patrols again? Why can't there be more connections directly to the problem areas? People who may interact, people who interact with people who cause problems. Who wants to start?
I'm going to need the card because you had 3 questions in one. So, in regards to foot patrols, I will tell you with the advent of the police car, it was put in place to allow the officers to get to where they needed to go a lot quicker. How about that? So, we do have different housing developments that our officers will get out on foot patrol within. And it's not just from, we want their presence there more. You have to realize too that when you look at the square miles from the city of Rockford, and as the calls are coming in, we need the officers to get there relatively quickly. And just from a crime prevention aspect, it does a lot just to know that the officers are in the neighborhood. We encourage them, they may not be on foot patrol, but to get out and interact with the residents as they're cruising through the neighborhoods. But that's as time allows, when they're not responding to other calls. There was a question in regards to when will you see results, is it? So I will tell you, just looking at, how do I frame this correctly? When we arrest certain individuals, especially if there's some affiliation with gangs and things of that nature, there's someone lying in wait, ready to step up and take their position. So I think definitely with the prevention model aspect, where we're able to have an impact at a younger age to show them, especially when you're dealing with a generational thing, where I have individuals that dad's granddad might have been a gang banger, dad's a gang banger. Therefore, I feel that's the way I have to step up and fill that role. And believe it or not, the kids do get pressure from family members. I'm not saying all of them, but there are those that get pressure from other family members who feel that I've got to step up, where I've got 5 and 6-year-olds going up gang signs. So, was that my last question? Address foot patrols. From the police department aspect, yeah, I think I kind of covered that. So, I have been on the department, just started my 25th year with the Rockford Police Department. A majority of my work within the department has been community-based. So we are definitely, COVID kind of set us back for a couple of years. We have a plethora of things planned throughout the summer, and hopefully we come out of COVID and there'll be more that continues. But we're constantly doing work out in the community. So you will see some things. If you haven't, I don't know if you're on social media, but definitely we'll be pushing more information out in regards to, I think we're averaging 2 or 3 events a week that are just community-based, that are being hosted by the police department.
I would just add, first of all, I want to say I worked with Chairman Chiarelli for several years, and so if he says, and when he tells me that they are working on addressing the redistribution of the 1-cent sales tax, I know that's correct. I believe him when he says that. But you also heard him say that's going to take time. These are generational issues. This is generational trauma that we are dealing with. It's generational inequity. It's de-resourced communities that are at the root cause of so many of our children reaching for guns. And so it's not going to be something that's going to happen quickly. In addition, we've heard really good things coming out of the school district recently with the new Handle Care project and program that we were able to work with them and ensure was launched in 4 months. And if that's not record time, I'm not sure what is. But there is a significant amount of work to do yet within our school districts. We have been meeting with them for 14 months, and I would say that we would both agree that our office has been relentless in those conversations. We have a sense of urgency and a lack of patience that I think any organization who is not meeting us where we are feels regularly. And so when it was curious to me to find a report written in 2008 by some of the most bright, intelligent, talented minds in this community. Judge Janet Holmgren was one of the people who signed on to it. And they wrote a report in 2008 and outlined what this community needed to do to get our hands and arms around youth violence. And they predicted if the community invested, if we invested in a sustained way and did not require organizations like the Family Peace Center and organizations that are also doing other organizations doing work with youth to have to sustain ourselves. 30 to 40% at any given time of our office's efforts to address youth and domestic violence are hurt by our requirement to find grant funding to keep our operations running. And they estimated in this 2008 report, if we had sustained consistent funding, we would start to see a turn. And if every agency in this community who engages with youth, whether that's in a criminal justice setting, a direct social service setting, or an education setting, if all of them are at the table with sustained funding, looking at our outcomes and improving our responses, we were looking at about a 10-year time frame. And so we're in trouble, and we need every agency, to the extent that they are not looking at their outcomes and making those community-centered and involving the community in their conversations on what the solutions are. We need, to the extent that they're not doing that, for them to come to the table. And we need all of you to hold elected officials, and that means us, not me, us collectively, responsible for doing what we say that we are going to do. And that doesn't just mean the city, that is every board and every other elected official in this community.
Thank you. I promised this was going to be 6 to 8, and I don't want to infringe on the time of the panelists. We have lots of questions. I think that's a great thing. Part of what we wanted to do with this, however, is to go beyond the questions and to get community involvement, to hear from you. What are your suggestions? Some of them are here. Ask the people up here, will these suggestions work? What else can we do? This is not going to be a one-off. We intend to keep this going. That's the only way to solve this problem. We have to confront it as a community. And I'm just going to stop. I have 2 other things to say. I had a question, again, for the League. Since the League of Women Voters disapproves of the Second Amendment, what effort has been made by the League of Women Voters to repeal the Second Amendment? Well, we have not. We do not object to the Second Amendment. It is part of the Constitution. We have made no effort to repeal the Second Amendment. What we are talking about is illegal guns, and guns that cause mayhem beyond what normal people would expect when they get a gun for protection, or to have in their house, or to go hunting. Do we really need AK-15s that maim beyond compare? One of the children I heard at Robb Elementary, the only way they could identify her was by her sneakers. That was it. Do we really need those kinds of guns available to everybody? That's one of these issues. I'm going to do just a few more questions and turn it over to the people. They keep coming. It's good you can make these as suggestions, okay? They keep coming. I really do. What is the outlined strategies plan for combating the increase in shooting in Rockford? And 2, how can we fill more of these streets with the parents of the perpetrators of violence. Seats, sorry.
I'm not, to the second half of it, how can we fill these seats with parents of the offenders? It would be interesting to find out what services they needed and that they were not able to access. It would be very interesting to know what avenues they tried and where their barriers were. I think that's a good idea.
I'm just going to add to that in regards to when I'm dealing with parents that feel that the system has failed them, and after their child has been incarcerated or is now deceased, the level of frustration that I've been met with when I have those conversations with those parents, because as I mentioned earlier, it has been the mantra that we can't offer you services because your kid's not been in enough trouble. And we have to change that. Because at that point, then it becomes too late. When I'm dealing with juveniles that are now institutionalized, and they return back to this community from IDJJ, and they've learned how to be better criminals and revert to the streets solely.
And I have another question from Marlena. Could you speak about the positive results from the RC Center? For the RC Center. Yes.
They have, let me see, they have approximately, and I was going to mention this previously, so I'll tie it into this. The Resource Intervention Center, which was established in part with the help of the Crime Commission and Alice Uphouse and a group of other people. The Resource Intervention Center currently has 20 evidence-based practices, and the Gender Resource Intervention Center that I mentioned earlier, we expect to do the same model with that. So as far as what is the county doing, we intend to slowly build that as well, dependent on the budget and dependent on grant funding. So the one thing I can tell you is that in comparison to individuals that go to the Department of Corrections as opposed to those that go that are on probation, the recidivism rate is drastically different. And it's probably because they do not get any services at Department of Corrections, and they do get them here. For instance, individuals released from IDOC who returned to Winnebago County, 56% were rearrested for any type of crime within 3 years of their release, and 22% were rearrested specifically for a violent crime. Among the people discharged from probation, which means they would have had services at the RIC, 36% experienced rearrest for any offense within 3 years, and only 12% were rearrested specifically for a violent crime. That's 12% too many, but it's still drastically different from the 22% from IDOC.
Just don't want anybody to escape from the panel. So here's one for Jay Henry. What are you doing to educate the general public about red flag laws and make it easier to implement?
So I'm at the community at large right now. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to get on the commission. I think I was invited because our county is actually doing pretty good, but unfortunately it's on the micro level. And let me just give you 2 examples. So we have had the situation where we had a son and a daughter who were very concerned about their father and his mental faculties and some of the things he was going through. He had lots of pounds. So we helped them get him. It's essentially a protection for firearms. Another example is we had someone who was in a mental health crisis. Probably their actions didn't rise to the commission of crime. However, we had a very fearful family member, and based on the facts, as our office they were laid out, we worked with that individual to get more protection for firearms. So it is on a micro level. We have educated the community on it, and the numbers aren't yet. I don't know. I think 100 to counties, there's only a handful that are actually issued by a judge. Even Winnebago County, we're probably one of the better counties, and it's still probably maybe about 10. So we have to be much better. Now, remember, there's still a legal standard that has to be met in order to do this. It's similar to border protection in this way. You can go for an emergency where you are telling the judge your side of the story, or no one on the other side, and that would be issued for a relatively short period of time, and that's set for a plenary or permanent hearing as for both sides can appear, and the guns can be seized for a longer period of time. So hopefully that provides some direction, but no, there's nothing on the website right now. I haven't done anything major to, other than this right here, to let the community know about this. But it is significant that, again, similar to the order of protection, you don't need our office, you don't need law enforcement. You can go just like you can go to the courthouse and get an order of protection, and that's something that the public certainly has to be educated
I'm just going to do 2 more questions, and we're going to get to the part where you contribute. If you have time left over at the end, I'll go back to the questions. I hope that's okay. Can the city and county deliberately incentivize economic development on the west side?
So the question was deliberately incentivize economic development. Going back as alderman, there's a lot of dollars spent on the west side of our infrastructure. We are definitely dealing with a major blight problem in Winnebago County, the unincorporated areas. So I'll speak to you about unincorporated and incorporated. The actual Winnebago County boards full jurisdictions over unincorporated Winnebago County. Every other area that's incorporated has a jurisdiction of the city of Rockford, South Beloit, Loves Park, Chesney Park. Those have their own mayors and their own boards. So what we're specifically talking about is unincorporated Winnebago County, which is the Winnebago County Board. Dorothy Red, board member here, speaks about blight. She's been talking about blight for over 20 years in her district. When I became chairman, it's like, we need a blight initiative. What are we doing in the county to address blight in unincorporated Winnebago County? We are so far behind the city of Rockford with their initiatives and their ordinances as it pertains to blight. But that's been going on for years. So we are dedicated and committed to that blight initiative, working with the health department, who is an arm of the Winnebago County, who regulates and enforces and has her own set of policy rules pertaining to blighted properties, demolitions. We rely heavily on the health department. It's a disconnected system in my eyes, because coming in as a Rockford alderman, it was all in one house, one set of rules, and it's enforced by one city council. The county government is so much different, and we have to respect that, because that's how counties are established. The county is an arm of the state of Illinois. Everything we do is by state statute. Representative West, we just had several meetings about several different initiatives that what the state tells us to do, we have to do. And there's a lot of areas in blight that we can't do as a county because it's not under our jurisdiction. So we need help from our state reps and our senators to help us change the laws in the state of Illinois so we can move forward. It's completely different than municipal government. Municipal government can define their own rules and ordinances and language. The county does not have that luxury. Again, we are committed to helping Dorothy Red in her district, and there's other districts in Winnebago County that serve unincorporated areas that we need to address. So how do we incentivize growth in those areas? Very simply, we address the blight first. We address the people's needs in those areas. I call it the forgotten areas in Winnebago County. Right? Coming from the city of Rockford, being a city of Rockford residents, my focus was on a ward, right? In the city of Rockford. I have never seen the condition that I see in Winnebago County in certain areas with the amount of blight that's been occurring. for years, as Jennifer said. This is generational. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of people to put their heads together and roll up their sleeves and have the will and desire to change state law, state, county laws, so we can do these things. So the incentivizing of people is first understanding what our role is and what our boundaries are. A lot of people come to me and say, you need to do this, that, and the other thing. I look up state statute, I can't do that. That's why I go to the senators and the state reps. Right? So we are definitely dedicated to that. But it's going to take a lot of help from the state, to the board, and to the people to understand that. The will is there. Right? And we have to be able to change the way we operate as a county government. My opinion, my humble opinion.
So thank you, Chairman. And I will say, go back to one of my previous points, that we are in a far better position between partnership with the county, with Chairman Torelli as the chair. And I definitely trust what he says when it comes to events like this and states where he stands on different issues and what he's working towards. So can we specifically incentivize investment on the west side? Absolutely. I think there's probably three big areas that we can do that. Number one is in infrastructure. You see development going where there's sound infrastructure. You look at what the city has done over the last 6, 7, 8 years. You see South Main being redeveloped. Just this morning, you read in the newspaper that there's $160 million worth of projects being proposed and or in the works along South Main Street. You look at North Main Street being redone. You see new businesses, Swedish American opening a clinic. You look at West State Street. Finally, this summer, phase 2 of West State Street will be complete. But just even with that first initial phase, it gave some confidence to the amazing folks over at Crusader to rebuild a $21 million clinic and keep their administration headquarters right there along West State Street. You can look at those types of infrastructure projects that play a key role. I think certainly in Blaine, we have struggled with Blaine for a long period of time. So at the city, we take down about 100 homes per year, but we are getting to the point that we need these properties reinvested in. So we have done some really unique partnerships. We've recapitalized something called the Northern Illinois Community Development Corporation, which provides money to locally owned businesses who need the capital to buy these blighted and dilapidated properties. And what they do is they get low interest loans to purchase a property. They do the work to enhance those properties, and the goal of the program is they have to sell it to a single-family owner-occupied resident to help build up stability in those neighborhoods. We've also just funded our region's first community development financial institution, which will really do much of what that NICDC, which I just explained, but do it on steroids. It'll allow us to get more money from banks. It'll allow us to get more money from the Department of Treasury to go after these blighted properties. I think the county has done an amazing job when it comes to the trustee program. They deserve a lot of credit for how they changed and transformed that trustee program to help reduce blight and get properties back on the tax rolls. We also are really fortunate because I'm guessing some of you in here don't like me and didn't want to vote for home rule. So we borrowed, that was funny, thanks. All right, good, pretty laugh. So we borrowed Belvedere's home rule status and we created a regional plan to take these properties that are no longer productive and get them back being productive properties in our community. I would also say development. There are certain areas in our community that we will certainly, I wouldn't say open up the checkbook, but we are very targeted on getting redeveloped. I'm really happy to see North Main and Riverside Highlander finally get away from the former, the gentleman who no longer owns it. I'll just say it that way, I remember where I'm at. So yes, that's like a place that we would be very purposeful in how we would want to see the investment. I would say there's other things. If you look at what we just did 2 weeks ago with Think Big, we just invested $3.1 million as a city council into a women and minority entrepreneurship accelerator for small businesses. So now we want this community, you look across the country, women and minorities are starting more businesses than anywhere, anyone else. And so we in Rockford want people to say, I don't need to move to Chicago, Atlanta, or Nashville. I can start my business here. I can not only start it, but I'm supported by the city. And I can excel and thrive with my business here. So we have more startup businesses in our community. Those are some of the ways we do it.
Since the mayor brought up the trustee program, as chairman, I'm the trustee for the trustee program, which means if someone doesn't pay their property tax for 3 years, someone doesn't pay those taxes, no one redeems those taxes, the trustee, on behalf of Winnebago County, takes title for a trustee. All the taxes are wiped out, all the liens are wiped out. Tax liens, property liens, maintenance liens. This is a great program, so I'm here to promote this since Tom brought it up. If you have a piece of property that's in the trustee program next to your parcel, and you would like it, please let me know and I will give it to you free. We will also plat it for free. And we will also waive 1 year of the additional tax since it's a joint year property. That's a new program that we just came out with. All the letters are going out to the adjacent property owners. In the last year and a half that I've been there, we've been through thousands of properties that have been sold at auction and have now been repurposed and brought back on the tax rolls. So what the mayor is talking about with the land bank, that's powerful programs related to the light. So again, if you want free property, you know of a piece of property in the trustee program, I'll sell it to Tom for $1. Anyone else, $0 if you want a piece of land.
Thank you all. I'm putting these two questions together, and this is the last one before we go to the audience. And I have someone here who says he has an answer to this problem. I would suggest when we go to the audience for suggestions, we have to have a time limit on that too, because we want everybody to speak and tell us what they think. Anyway, where do these kids' guns come from?
How many suicides by guns in Winnebago County?
Well, in regards to where these guns come from, I'll tell you right after coming into office as chief, I did a dive into that. Being one of the few states that still require a firearms identification card, my initial thought process was perhaps with us being so close to Indiana and Wisconsin was that the guns were coming from those two states. That was not the case. A deeper dive into it actually showed that the guns were not only not stolen, but they were purchased right here in this area. So out of the 433 guns that we recovered last year, only 8% were reported stolen. So I've got my intel folks in-house that are doing some deeper dives into some things there, as well as doing some additional work with ATF to get around that. So we have seen an increase, if you will, with the ghost guns that are appearing here, the 3D laser printed guns that one can make. So I can tell you with those guns not being stolen, I employ any gun owner to be responsible with your firearms. Keeping a gun in a car is not a safe place for a weapon. Leaving one's purse unattended in the grocery store as you're shopping and you have a firearm in your purse is not being responsible over those guns. So I can't express that enough. In regards to suicide rates, that is not information that we readily produce in-house as far as how many suicides we've had with firearms in the city, but that's something that the coroner's office does keep track of. So I do not have that information.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next part of the program. I really, really appreciate all of the panel and the time that you've spent answering these questions. As people come up with suggestions, I think it will probably come to you to say, that's a good idea, or no, we can't do that because. So with that as the parameters, do we hear anybody? I do have one. Prophet. Who says, yes, he says he has an answer. Where are you? Okay. Not too long though, okay?
Okay, my name is Papi Yusuf. I'm a community activist. I'm 20 years veteran of the United States Navy. I did 19 years, 11 months, 29 days, 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 15 seconds. I did 3 tours in Vietnam. I'm a dedicated proud Westerac and a retired school teacher and a truck driver. I got the solution to your problem. In the book of Nehemiah, it says, "Thou art a gracious and compassionate God." What I want to speak about tonight, be a father to the fathers. The breakdown of American family has brought widespread problems to the United States. While only 1 in 10 American children live without a father in the home in 1960, approximately 1 in 4 children are growing up in a household without the physical presence of a father today. This means there are over 20 million Americans under the age of 18 living without a father in the home. The cold hard statistics show that children who grow up without a father are more likely to live in poverty, more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol, more likely to drop out of school, more likely to become violent criminals, and more likely to become single parents themselves. Children without a father tend to struggle in school. According to a social professor of social work at the University of British Columbia, fatherless children generally score lower in reading, math, and literature. They are also more likely to be truant from school, more likely to leave school by age 16, and less likely to attain academic and professional quality in a level. 9 times more likely to drop out of school. They're more likely to be raised in poverty. 7% of adolescents in correctional facilities come from father's home. 60% of rapists were raised in father's home. This also contributes to poor health. A 2005 study published in the Journal of American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry found that middle schoolers, not living with both biological parents, were more likely to suffer from a psychiatric mood disorder. 8% of adolescent psychiatric hospitals come from father's home. 2 times more likely to commit suicide. And fatherless children make more fatherless children. A 2004 study published in the Journal of Family Issues found that being raised by a single mother raised the likelihood of teenage pregnancy, as well as the likelihood of marriage with less than a high school degree. 70% of teen pregnancies happen in father's home. 9 times more likely to be raped or sexually abused. 90% more likely to be abused domestically and traumatized. My solution to this fatherless problem in the United States, I want all Christian men who are following Jesus Christ to be a father to the children born. Don't have a father. This will solve all that. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
I think there were some very good suggestions in that, but I want to turn it around a little bit and paraphrase. I heard Chief Red speak one time, and it really touched my heart. And she said she had this young child, 12 I think, who didn't want to go home in the afternoons because his brother belonged to a gang and he had nobody else there to care for him. What can we as a community do to help that? Any ideas from the panel?
I always encourage people instead of, programs or even church, we don't need that. We can be a good neighbor. We can be intentionally aware of what's going on around us and in the people's lives around us. And obviously we have to seek permission from parents, but if there's a single parent home or a home that is having other troubles in it, to help a kid with his homework or to invite him into your Friday night game nights or to bring him to church with your family. These are things that just aren't natural, and we always talk about everybody else having to do it, but really everybody that's in a congregation is a human being in a neighborhood. And that's what it takes, is all of us to be good neighbors and to be alert and to care about each other. And when somebody's struggling or suffering, to try to step in at the amount allowable. That's always just my opinion.
So I would say that we have a pending grant right now with the Department of Justice for approximately $1 million, and that will allow us to develop a co-located facility of youth services within the Kilburn Avenue Boys and Girls Club. We developed a multidisciplinary approach to this grant that includes the Kilburn Avenue Boys and Girls Club, as well as our Juvenile Probation Department, Youth Services Network, The Right Way, and the 815 Get Connected. And so what I want to also stress is that we wrote this grant and this narrative based on community listening sessions and interviews with people with lived experience. When we went to the community and said, what do you need? What do you need to have some hope? What do you need to make a decision different than picking up the gun? What they told us was that they needed some place to go that was safe, that had the services and resources that they needed, had recreation, had educational help, had mentorship, and had therapy. And so the grant that we wrote includes all of those services in one location in the neighborhood where these youth and their families are. And we intend to staff that space with navigators, whole family community health workers, to provide wraparound services to the needs for the people within the homes. And I would say that much like everything else we do, even if we don't get the grant, we will launch this initiative. We will be awarded the grant we anticipate around October of this year. And the last thing I would say is that, again, everything that we are doing, we are developing, the narratives that we write, the strategies that we develop, these are not our words. These are words of our community. The children, the young adults, and the older adults who come to us, who've given us the grace and time to meet with us and provide us some insight into what we need to really get boots on the ground and get the community turned around.
I'm hearing some wonderful suggestions, but everyone's not being called to the table. And LWVGR is here in Rockford. Call us to the table. I've been an educator for 35 years. I see it all. Our kids are suffering, especially in the school system. One building can't have one counselor. We need 3 or 4, and plus 2 counselors just for mental illness, because there's a lot of mental illness going through the school system that has not been addressed. They're just passed on to the next grade. I see them in my classroom. I reach out and try, some of them who have learning disabilities. So as their team, I reach out and try to give them services, and they're really like 5th grade. A lot of them are just dropped and lost. Education is not important to them. Just surviving over in conflict or surviving at home. It's not just about what we can do. It's about that they can trust us. Because if they can't trust you, they won't tell you anything. I returned one of my students' family member to DCFS. And he told me at the table, I don't trust you anymore. So how can we build trust with the youth? What can we do? We have safe homes where it's not a home, it's a safe place where they can just go. Where they're lost, if there's something happens at home, it can be a place in their neighborhood where they can run to because they know that it can be someone's residence, but it's just considered the safe home. So we need to develop something that is going to work throughout our community.
Are you referencing like our strong houses? Okay, so the question was whether or not the police department opened a new strong house on the west side. No, it did not. So, however, the strong house that's on Irving Avenue, programming is being revamped there. We're kicking off a lot of new things over there in conjunction with United Way. And that's been up and operating for probably a year, if not just a little longer, I believe. And they're doing programming all summer as well, so we're collaborating with them as well. And so is Jim's office.
I think those kinds of things need to be out into the community more. We need to play them out. We need to send them to our schools. This is what's available. Take advantage of it.
Yeah, with the number of kids that attend West Middle School being right across the street, they've been a great partner. It's been a great partnership over there. to the point where the YMCA adopted West Middle School, and so that's working really well for us.
Is there a way that we can deal with the gun dealers that are in and around the town, that are selling these guns to the kids? And then this weekend at Pecatonic, there's a gun show that I know is going to be hawking some rather lethal weapons.
So I'm going to hand this mic off here in just a second. So with the work with ATF, I have officers assigned out at the ATF office here in Rockford. So I don't have any record of these individuals selling guns to the kids. Do I think individuals are perhaps doing straw purchases? So we are having some larger scale conversations with organizations that have actually gone after the gun shops and even some of the manufacturers. So, no. I'm gonna let you.
Okay. Go ahead, and then we'll go over there. I know there are a lot of people back there.
I just want to say this speaks a lot for our leaders and elected officials that are here tonight taking on this subject. What I'm hearing is a lot of great ideas. I was an advocate and I campaign for the Mental Health Act. I run a foundation for first responders mental health. I think that is huge. We need more counselors like this will put in the schools. We need early involvement with our youth. There's a lot of programs that everybody's talking about, but in my humble opinion, we need to bring those together as one unit. Funding is always a problem. I'm not picking on Marie's West, but this no bail thing is going to cost the county some money. Estimated $5 million a year starting in 2023. So I would love some conversations to see how that goes. What we can do with that. But really, the big thing is we just need to come together as a community. And I'm on record right now, I've done a lot with you in different areas, sports and whatnot. But I would love to be involved in one unit as all these different organizations come together, have a plan, because you can have all the funding. But if we don't work together as a whole with a plan, we're going to be right back here next year. Thank you.
So Brad, I will let you know real quick, there are some collaborative approaches that are taking place where that, as Jan mentioned, having those measurable outcomes, especially looking at the organizations that are coming forward and seeking funding, without that, I don't know if this is my spot to say, but without having that implementation of measurable outcomes from, say, programming, the funding I don't believe is going to be there. Jan, by all means, feel free to step in and correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
I'm sorry. Our Rockford Police Department now currently sheriff's office has done some great programs with you. We should all be proud of all of the department.
I would say Chief is spot on, and I would just say that it's important to address outcomes not only for continued funding, but because our community deserves it. We, across this country, spend so much time checking boxes to sustain funding, and we don't examine whether or not this goal or objective is really going to improve the lives of human beings in our community. And so we at the city are extraordinarily data-driven and outcome-driven. As I said, we, City Council and the expansion of my office, approved funding so that we could contract with a full-time partner to develop a data infrastructure to start to measure the progress and efficacy of these programs. And so I would welcome anyone who is interested in collaborating, come join us. We move fast, we are impatient, and we are, again, outcome-driven and community-centered. And so with those caveats, we'll take anybody on our team.
Thank you, Brad, for bringing up Indiana cash bail. And so just so that you all know, starting January of 2023, Illinois will end cash bail, which means that currently, if you are arrested and put in jail, you are able to pay a bond. However, if you don't have the money, you stay in jail. So it comes down to being part of the haves and the have-nots. When you end cash bail, The judge would be able to do a risk assessment and determine if you were to stay in jail or if you are okay to wait for your trial outside of jail. Case in point, for example, the Kyle Rittenhouse case. He was proven innocent recently. However, during right at the beginning of it, he had angel investors to bail him out of jail. However, not many people have that, and it's disproportionately impacting Black and brown people. One other bill I have is right now the law is that if I'm wrongfully arrested, accidentally arrested, who's the wrong person kind of thing, and it's happened to me before. That arrest record remains unless I pay. And how, again, people who don't have the money that aren't able to pay. I'm sitting on that bill. I think I could pass the bill, but I'm sitting on the bill because it's exactly what you said. We're taking money from, it's great to help and empower our fellow community members, but we also have to help and fund our court system. I'll talk to our circuit court, Tom Klein, and I'll meet with the Clerk Association to find a way, as I move towards taking the financial burden away from individuals, the state needs to come back and find a way to fund the court system. So we're committed to that as well.
Services as quickly and directly as possible. And I want everybody in this room to know that we built a multidisciplinary collaboration in the Mayor's Office with our partners at the Rockford Park District and the YMCA Youth Services Network and the Family Peace Center, and we submitted a proposal for District 205's call to action. And I'm happy to share that with anybody who would like to review that. But the call to action suggested and proposed to use the American Relief Act funds to put crisis response teams within 10 elementary schools. Of the district's choice, we suggested 10 based on Erickson Institute and other criminal data. We know that without the ACEs scores, that the vast majority of our children have been exposed to trauma. And the proposal suggested that, and again, this was informed by our grassroots team, it was informed by youth, and it was informed by adults who had been youth who had experienced trauma and been through the criminal justice system. And what we proposed is that these teams of 3 in each elementary school would be a barrier between an outburst of behavior and a disciplinary referral, so that we could have an opportunity with a behavioral specialist, a person from the community with lived experience, and a therapist to wrap our arms around that child on the spot within the building, try to de-escalate, regulate the behavior, and keep those babies in the buildings more than they are right now. And we submitted this call to action, and it was not accepted. The district has said that they were not going to accept this right now. They wanted to have some more discussions with us, and those discussions have led to, I believe at this point, an impasse and installed discussions. But the intent was that immediately, upon understanding what was happening with these children, again, from the professionals with mental health experience, that we could get them connected to referrals in a meaningful way. We cannot continue to hand overwhelmed people pieces of paper and tell them, good luck, and go call this when you have time. That is not working, it is not working, it is not going to work. And until we increase and improve our response and give them an actual warm handoff to another caring agency, to another caring adult that's going to wrap their arms around that child and the entire family, we are going to continue to go in reverse. And it was important to us for those meaningful referrals on the spot, and again, by people who they would recognize from their community, who could say to them, I'll see you tonight at the Boys and Girls Club, let's play basketball. I'll see you tomorrow night at the YMCA, we're going to do some arts and crafts. I'll see you Thursday night, we're going to have a group for young women on leadership qualities and boundaries and self-respect. And so this is what we proposed. It's there for the taking. Our organization and our multidisciplinary teams within our office are ready to launch this as soon as we have permission from the district. We're just simply waiting for a yes.
I'm going to jump on that right now. I have some, it's a real passion of mine, and I have some people I know. I would like to help them launch that in the district if we keep at them in a large amount, and they know that the community wants, they're going to have to do it. They work for us.
And just to let you know, RPS 205 received $224 million of ARPA money, and they denied this program. I'm not here for that, but next year sometime. But I'm not going to be the one to tell you that, but contact your school. And they received an increase from the general revenue fund, and they denied that program. So contact your school.
The next election is April, but I promise that I will win.
Hi, my name is Erin Johnson. I'm a former chair of the Rockford Area Military Action for South America. I just want to say that 3 years ago, we had a panel just like this, where I did a presentation on the fire training order. I'm part of the committee for that presentation. For the presentation, we were in one of the Rockford Police District buildings, and Rockford Police was not represented on the panel. And so I want to say thank you to Chief Wright for being here tonight, and for all the work you're doing in the community. That's, a huge step from 3 years ago. And the other thing I just want to go back to the referendum was, the presentation, so I'm pretty familiar. You may not need a law enforcement officer to go and get the order, but you do need them to execute the order. And what we heard 3 years ago, and I've been a little bit out of the game, but what we heard 3 years ago was that police chiefs and sheriffs across the state were not going to execute the orders because they didn't believe in that as a viable option to combat violence. So I just feel like one thing we need to do, and I don't know if that's on the state commission or something we need to do locally, but it's certainly, making sure that we can trust that the law enforcement officers are going to do what they need to do at the time that someone has actually gone and asked for help.
I can sit here and I can listen to this and all see repetition. For me personally, what I'm looking for is some things to happen. But what I've heard with tonight is that in order for one thing to happen, another needs to happen, and another needs to happen. And I truly believe that what has happened to us is we have lost control ourselves. We don't control anything. There used to be a time where when there were issues in our neighborhoods, in our legislators' minds, we could change it. Because we in the streets, we raise hell. People that are in positions to help us, they work for us.
True.
I am totally dismayed about the representation of people of color here tonight. We are suffering. We are suffering.
Yes.
Something is going to have to take shape in order for us to get our ground. You know what? I was sitting here a minute ago and it occurred to me there's a good possibility for some of us who live in certain sections of this city to be on our way to our car, coming out of the grocery store, or just walking the dog to lose a life. It's not predicated to the west side of Rockford anymore. This can happen to any of us. We have to become more proactive. We have to get people to listen to us, and the way we do that is we have to demand their attention. We don't have to continue to take the crumbs that's falling from the table and eat them off of the floor. That's not the way this thing works. We have to go to work to help each other.
Yes.
I truly believe you were one of the first policemen that came to our property when I first came to this place. And I've known you for a long time. I believe that the remedy for a lot of the stuff that's happening now is I come from those elements at one time in my life. And I know how tough it is for those kids that are out there that we're missing. They need to have people that they can touch. They need to have people that they can look in our face and have some records to. We do it all now through Facebook, meetings such as we have, but this communication that we're going to have to get is going to have to come directly from someone. So our prayer today, my prayer is that everything that's been said here tonight, everything that I believe that can be done will be done. Amen.
Suicides that we've had in Vega County by firearms so far. Many of those which are youth. Thank you. Thank you.
I see a hand back there.
I had several things, but most of my questions have been kind of answered. Young lady spoke about $4 million. I think it was the mayor spoke about $50 million. How much was this money going toward gun violence? Did anyone of you answer that? And also, do you still have the buyback? Do you understand what
didn't get the last part.
The gun back.
Oh, the gun buyback.
Yeah. That's
Okay, yes, we did that many years ago. It was successful, very successful.
Are you still doing it?
No, we're not, but we have the people here to ask if they will do it, because we can't do it. We can't take those guns, somebody else needs to take it.
Well, to answer your question on the state side, sir, the reimagined public safety dollars that's coming to Rockford is about $50 million, and that's going straight into the communities and the patients that apply for it here in Rockford. And I'm on that committee along with, you on the committee? Along with the mayor. So we're hands-on in terms of making sure that money goes into the neighborhoods.
That's not answering my question.
Apologies. Can you elaborate on your question then?
How much is going towards gun violence?
The majority of that's going towards gun violence. All of it. Reimagining public safety, the focus was gun violence. Apologies.
Thank you.
Yes. So,
So I can tell you from historically looking at what's been done across the country, in reference to a gun buyback program, those are not your illegal guns that you're typically getting off the streets. I don't have gangbangers lining up to turn in their guns. So typically what we see when gun buybacks are initiated, you've got guns that were passed down to family members. Quite often they don't function anymore, they're rusted out and things of that nature. Those are typically the ones that get turned in. So absent a gun buyback program, I can tell you we do have residents that do call in and they just inherited their dad's guns or granddad's guns and they don't want them. So we direct them to the appropriate location in regards to turning over those guns. Okay.
From the city of Rockford, we have probably about $7.5 million through the Community and Domestic Violence Office. I understand not all of that is going directly to gun violence. Significant portion of it is. And then if you look at broader from, and you include like the City of Rockford Police Department budget, just from the technology standpoint that's focused on gun violence, it's several additional $1 million.
Chief Fred, is there a way we could put that information on the website or something to say, if you have a gun you don't want, drop it off at XYZ place? Yeah,
The answer is not much. I mean, there's nothing illegal about having a gun show. So that's the short answer. You may not like the answer, but that's the answer. From a prosecution or a deterrence factor, we can certainly do our best to prosecute those who are selling guns illegally. I can tell you, as a former federal prosecutor, prosecuting someone for a straw purchase is one of the most difficult charges to prove, based on the facts that you need to prove. And so that's always been a challenge. Always been a supply and demand problem. So if I could touch on the red flag for a second, because this is why I'm so happy I came this far. When I walked in today, I didn't realize it was such an issue. I had raised my hand to be on the statewide commission, and so I was ready to pat myself on the back. But obviously, I realized that I have not met the community's expectations, so I appreciate that. But one of the things I was hoping that we would have done at the beginning is really define what we mean by gun violence. And here's what I mean by that. So you have homicides by firearms. You have domestic violence where a firearm is used either as intimidation or in the actual assault. You have firearms used in illegal drug sales. And then you have mass shootings. But what I think most of us sitting here are thinking about is what's called community gun violence. And I think right now, Rockford, that's probably our biggest issue. And just red flag laws aren't going to solve community gun violence. And here's how I think you should think of community gun violence in terms of the factors. So one, usually it occurs outside of the home in a public setting. So it's on the street, it's porches, it's sidewalks. Secondly, because it deserves its own category, it is in
cars. And too often, cars driven by juveniles and stolen cars. Fourth, typically the people are not related to each other. They might know of each other, but they're not related. Usually there's not a close relationship. It is often related to some kind of beef. And I know that sounds hopefully simple, but almost all of these are either gang related or sometimes even more specifically social media beefs. They also, as I mentioned, are generally 18 to 26. I would extend that to 13 to 26, generally males. Although I know I'm painting with a broad brush, but we're talking about community gun violence. And lastly, while we all have stories about them happening throughout Rockford, they typically do occur in under-resourced neighborhoods. So when we talk about, it's important to understand the differentiation, because if we're trying to prevent mass shootings, it's a much different conversation than if we're trying to prevent community gun violence. And so I can't wait to get started on red flag laws and educating the community on that. But that's probably not going to solve our community violence problem. And why I think we've talked about youth so much is because without knowing what I just explained, you all sitting here, that's what's in your heads, right? You drive by shootings, your windows are open, you live in those neighborhoods, you hear it. And that's what we're thinking about. And all of us correctly have gone to our youth, whether it's the city of Rockford, the county, any of us up here who's sitting there. You identify that. And I understand the frustration you all have, but if nothing else, let's think about that as we go home. Lastly, I think it's important to correct one thing. That study came out in 2008. 2017, 18, and 19 were some of the safest years we've ever had in Rockford, Illinois in decades. So yes, something has happened, but we can't say it's always been like this. In fact, like I said, 18 and 19, I think it was the safest time we've had since maybe the 60s. Our violent crime rate was so low. So let's keep in mind, we've been there and it hasn't been that long. And I'm not blaming everything on COVID, believe me. I'm blaming some of it on us standing up here, myself included. Well, please trust us and have faith in us. We will, with your help, get this done.
And I will say Jay's right. I don't know how long, but I believe it's 27% reduction in violent crime, 34% reduction in property crime. That was up until March 1st of 2020. And we were also in the midst of experiencing, understand this, we were in the midst of experiencing the longest stretch in our city's history without a homicide. And then they say we have the bloodiest year. It's actually, they're wrong. We had the bloodiest 9 months in our city's history, from March 1st to the end of the year. I mean, we really did. And I will say, someone mentioned it earlier, I think someone said, how long will it take? I think we're going to see stretches that you'll see it go down. I think the thing that is fortunate with the group that's up here all the way across is we want to see those stretches that go down, but we want the root cause to actually always go down so that we don't have those highs. And I think with the collaboration in those initiatives that have been outlined, I think we have a great opportunity.
Thank you all so very much. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it, but I'm also going to tell you, you're going to keep hearing from us. You're right, Jay, this is a community problem. We're talking about community violence, and it is an epidemic in this community, and it can't be solved by any one of you up there. It has to be solved by the community. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Okay.